Wow, I'm so happy to be here with you, Ruth King. You are one of my sheroes in the whole world.
How precious of you. Yeah, back at you. Back at you.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. It's been many years since we've known each other, and
That's right.
you know, just where you've gone in all this time, and to watch you, and to be with you, and to sit with you, and to learn from you has been like a big part of my journey. And read your book, and it's just awesome all the way around. And I love the work. I just love you. Period.
Thank you, Konda.
Yeah, true that. So,
Yeah.
I'm always interested in finding out, like, where did your spiritual journey start? Like when you were at home with your family, like, what did you do? What were you in church? What church? What was
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the Baptist and the Pentecostal church now,
right on?
where, we had, it was a kind of environment where people would take a bullet for you, the close-knit, deep understanding, acceptance, all in your face with the truth kind of stuff. Unlike some of the sanghas we see, but
Right. Where was that? Where were you
I
located?
was in South Central Los Angeles. It was in South El Bethel Baptist Church, and my mother plays the piano in the church, and we all sang in the choir. So it was a big part of my life, and it was also around the time of the civil rights movements and the movement in the Black Panther movement, and it was just vibrant. The community was alive. It was a lot of complexity, and all of it landed in the church and in the music, often in the gospel, in the vibrancy of the gospel. And it just seemed like that was a place where a lot of things got worked out and loved up. And so, yeah, I grew up in that vortex of church life, and that you just showed up,
And you loved it.
I loved it for the most part. I mean, it was almost terrifying for me because there was so much structure and control. I mean, I had a kind of silent resentment about it, actually, because I felt controlled. And even though I saw a lot of magic and, expression, I felt that the role I was in, especially younger, was to be obedient, was to follow the law, was to put your faith in God, follow the rules. So that piece of it didn't work as well for me, and then I was dealing with a lot of the strong patriarchy, and, a lot of people had to, I had to protect myself in the church from a lot of male energy, as a young child. I was aware of having to work with that. So those kind of things just left a bad taste in my mouth. But in terms of just what it meant, the idea of crawling in somebody's arms or getting your head rubbed and everybody being fed, that kind of thing was, it was
right?
Beautiful.
Yeah. I grew up in a Baptist church as well, and it was all about the music and the sangha for me.
Yeah. And it's so different when we think about the Western context of sangha,
right?
In terms of vitality, energy. I grew up in settings where we weren't afraid of that kind of vitality. I mean, it was just a natural and kind of dignified way to work with what was pretty hard in our communities. So in that sense, I felt like it was sacred, but this idea of having to wait or put my faith outside of my own capacity to know for myself was not, and that didn't line up too well until I found myself more in this kind of Buddhist territory.
So let's talk about that. So this transition from that to the Buddhist territory, how did that happen? Or what was the appeal?
Well, I was never really involved in the church in the way I was growing up. once I left home, because leaving home was a lot about really leaving home and leaving a lot of things that felt tight and structured. I grew up in a family of 8. There were a lot of us. There was a lot of control. There was a lot of control in my household. So I was not looking for things that were in control, but I was still attracted to spirituality, had a lot of questions, was really curious about, especially the relational field of people. So I traveled a lot to different cultures, and, you know, as I was getting older and working, and studied other religions and got a taste of them, and just kind of found myself in the lap of the Dharma when I met Marlene Jones Schoonover in China, you know, on a trip there. And, you know, as you know her and how precious she is, before I knew it, she had invited me to join her at Spirit Rock.
Oh,
and
just a little footnote there is that Marlene was, well, for me and for you, the entry into the Buddha Dharma and the Theravada tradition at Spirit Rock. She was the only Black woman she was pioneering. She was there, and she went through total hell, and she brought a lot of us in. So I just want to put
let's just underline her, highlight, you know.
Yeah, she's an ancestor now. She's an ancestor.
And she is an ancestor, but she was core in inviting me in, because in China, it's a sea of women, it's the Women's World Conference, right? And I end up magically standing next to her while we're watching this 2-story Buddha, right? And then she turns to me. Here we are, 2 Black women, long dreadlocks with these tears in our eyes, right?
In China.
And so, needless, long story short, we're both in the Bay Area and end up connecting. And I go to Spirit Rock, and I hear this message in the talk about know for yourself. And there was something about being in a spiritual or a religious context where somebody was inviting you to know for yourself. You know, that there is a part of you that knows and that takes you on this journey, you know? That to me had resonance, that hit a note that had my hair standing on my body from head to toe. And before I knew it, I was engaging in this kind of intellectual rigor around faith and practice of the Dharma, but also knowing for myself what it was. There was something about that piece that really was important for me.
What is it? What is that inner knowing? If you can describe it.
If I were to describe it, it's that subtlety between reading about faith or reading about a teaching and feeling good about what you read, but then having a practice that has you be in touch with what you just read. That was kind of the knowing that I felt was important. So instead of reading about faith or hearing about faith as a promised land or a place, that you might get to once you die,
Right.
So instead of just kind of having that as a hope, as an aspiration, I could sit with seeing my faith moment by moment by having a powerful relationship with my mind, and feeling the relief and the release that happens moment by moment by not gripping to a certain idea about something or wanting something to be here other than what's here. I mean, it's just this kind of way of experiencing the present moment as an act of faith, as opposed to a destination or an aspiration. To me, that's been pretty powerful.
So you just said something that I want you to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
You said not wanting something that's not here, and being with what is.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into the Black American experience, which has been so oppressive, which has had a lot of things that we don't want?
Mhm.
And accepting what is sounds like I'm accepting this condition that is this socioeconomic oppressive
Mm.
system, that we're accepting that and don't ruffle the feathers. I mean, how do you distinguish between that? What's that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just really the core question, isn't it? Because for me, how I distinguish is looking at patterns. Like I look at the Gestalt or the constellation of things. And what I see in terms of my, or what I saw before I'm up to this point, I've shifted a bit. But my relationship to our social harsh reality used to be that I would run myself ragged in response to it. I would get so lit up. I would be so on fire. I would be impulsive in my actions. I would be trying to do and be all things to all people. There were so many, and still are so many issues to address. I was indiscriminate in how to make sense out of it. I was mad about it.
Mm-hmm.
Would let you know about it. It was somebody else's fault, and it still is in a lot of ways. But
Be clear.
that kind of running ragged. I mean, I just don't feel like our causes should kill us. Okay, I
Say
saw
that
my,
again. You got your voice went crazy there. Say that again. You don't think what?
I don't think our causes should kill us.
Got you.
Right. So my grandmother, who I saw pacing the floor back and forth in a old, worn out apron, weary, just weary to the bones, because she couldn't take care of these Black bodies, right? I mean,
Right.
I saw that growing up and my heart ached for her.
Yeah.
I couldn't comfort her because it was, I mean, I didn't have any tools for being able to be with that kind of complexity other than to fight harder.
Yeah.
And I saw all my people, so too many of them dying from diabetes and hypertension and all of these kind of stress related issues. And I just felt like there had to be a better way to hold this complexity so that I wasn't killing myself. And that's the distinction I make. When I'm sitting on the cushion and I'm saying to myself, let me be with what's here right now, that means I'm not at war with it in this minute. That means I'm developing a capacity to hold it and realize it's not going to kill me, so that I can stay still long enough to see clearly. And, you know, there's just a way that's been a better way to roll and a better way to serve. Because I think it's hard to serve if we're on edge all the time. And yet we need the edge to stay alert and awake. But it's hard to really serve if we're not conscious of the impact we're having that could be contributing to more harm than its release. So that's really how I'm trying to work with it in my practice.
And what I'm hearing is that I'm hearing you say that primarily in this area of the world out there, and how it treats Black people and Black women and all the things that we're talking about, that this practice helps you handle it, not be at war with it, be with it in a different way, and not make you crazy or sick or ill or die from it. And what about also, I'm wondering about the practice, the Dharma practice and Buddha practice, the impact. Does it have an impact? Does that change within you also have an effect on how you relate to the other?
The other being?
The other, whoever the other is, the other meaning, right now we're talking about white suppression and white and racism, let's just say.
Right.
Are you still just as mad, or you're just taking care of yourself, or is there some other transmutation?
I get you. Yeah. No, there's definitely a transmutation. And what it is for me has been that I could stay face to face with the insanity that's coming my way, right, without turning away from it.
Okay.
Without being so pissed off about it that I'm knocked off my seat.
Right.
I feel like I'm able to stay focused on the issue more. I'm looking more at what needs to happen instead of who's wrong. You know, so there's a
What needs to
pointedness
happen instead of who you are?
instead of what's wrong.
Instead of what's wrong. What
Mm-hmm.
needs to happen instead of what's wrong?
Mm-hmm. You know, so I just have to, you know, a lot of ignorance gets thrown in your face, especially when you're talking to white folks. And that's the work that I do. I mean, my work is in primarily talking to a lot of institutions about how racism is not only constructed, but perpetuated and maintained within institutions. So it's, I mean, you get a lot of reasons why it's not what you think, and it's not, oh, that's not it, or you don't have it right. And what I find is that I can sit in the face of that resistance, call it what it is, and keep focused on what needs to happen for it to change. And that's been useful because there's just so much resistance to looking. I mean, we have that in the presidency right now. We have the norm right now of creating a story just because it's opportune in the moment as a way of moving away from the truth that's glaring you in the face. So I think we're in a more intense atmosphere right now, not the most intense I've seen, but we are in an intense atmosphere right now where people feel like they get to lie about what's right here in front of your face. So in terms of my practice, the cumulative impact of my practice has allowed me to stay steady in the face of that. Talk about the craziness as a dynamic and help people see what the constellations of harm are. And that's just my focus. I'm not gonna be distracted by all the other craziness. So what that means to me, and I think what I offer to other people that are doing this kind of work, is to have the, you know, to have your intention clear, because I know I can't be everywhere and do all things to all people, but I am clear about this particular slice of the issue around race and racism and our role in it. And that's where I hang out. I stay focused with that. I stay on point with that. I ripen my understanding about that. And I try to keep my heart clean around that, you know, because I don't want to be coming. My commitment to myself is not to add harm to situation, not to harm people, and of course not to be harmed. So that's how the practice has helped me stay steady, stay clear, stay non-reactive. Yeah.
You know, that brings me to talk a little bit about your incredible latest book. And Mindful of Race has, it's incredible book. And if you can, you kind of said, but in a nutshell, you know, the elevator pitch of what the book is about.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what?
Yeah.
And who would be who is, if there is an audience for the book, if there was, you know, if you could segment an audience, who are you writing it for? Who did you write it for?
Well, I think who I'm writing it for is anyone who wants to take a double look, a second look, maybe a third or a fourth look at how they've been conditioned to relate to race and racism. The book is for them. So you have to be curious about this. You have to be curious about how you transform, if you will, the racial tension that grips your life, whether it's ignorance, innocence, or just plain out rage, how you're gripped by race and racism and the impact that has on you, and then how that plays itself out on others. And so the book is set up in 3 sections. The subtitle of the book is Transforming Racism from the Inside Out. So the book is not focused on how we address social issues. It's focused on what we contribute to social issues through our own awareness around our conditioning and habits. So
Wow.
I'm looking internally, mindfulness is the lens, and I've set the book up in 3 sections. You know, I talk about race as a heart disease that's curable, racism.
Yeah.
So we have the diagnosis, which is part 1, the heart surgery, which is mindfulness, which is part 2, and then the recovery is a culture of care, you know, which is our relationship to the world and to our communities, given what we cultivate in our own heart mind through meditation. But we first have to start with understanding this kind of structure of racism, which is what we're looking at in that section. Is we're looking at our individual programming, our racial group identity programming, and also how institutions kind of exploit and work with those dynamics. So that needs to be understood from the context of power dynamics, dominant and subordinated racial dynamics. We need to get that skeletal shape in our hearts and minds so we can see it and then see our relationship to it.
Yeah.
And then we can apply a mindful lens to it, a sense from the principles of getting ourselves still, the power of stillness, the power of turning inward, the power of compassion, the power of perceiving, and the quality of our perception and how it supports our moral character. This capacity of equanimity. And so we're getting a bunch of tools in part 2 of how to be with our programming and hold ourselves as we're going through a reorientation or programming around shifting our habits. And then the third part of the book is really speaking to our relational field. And what I'm encouraging there is racial affinity groups that support us in deepening our understanding with other people like ourselves to better understand and to come out of hiding, if you will, around some of the conditioned ways we've been in relationship with race. You know, so for white folks, usually when they get together, they usually don't get together because they're good individuals. They don't think about themselves as a collective. So being in a racial affinity group really forces them to really look at themselves as members, as body parts, as a part of something larger than their own self or self-interest. For people of color, and let's just say Black folks getting in a racial affinity group, what we're looking at is perhaps the ways, now there's a list of questions that I actually invite people, it's a very structured process. But what we're looking at is perhaps how we have come to avoid each other, if you will, through a focus on white folks. And what happens when that's not our focus? Where does it leave us, right? What do we know about each other? How much do we give ourselves time with each other as a collective? What's the quality of, are we holding each other to our practice, for example? If we look in the dorm and community, if stuff comes up, can we point to the practice as opposed to the social justice thing that might need to happen? I'm not minimizing that, but again, I'm looking at how do we stay steady and in our seats when we're doing this work, and how do we care for each other so that we can do that work? So these are some of the things that a racial affinity group supports us, and you know, for also with people of color, and you know, sometimes there's this presumed solidarity, like we come together and we're kind of like all in the cause, but we don't really know each other. We haven't investigated. Our focus is external. So there's a deeper intimacy we get to have and healing with ourselves when we come home in this way. And we're pointed towards an investigation of our distinction and programming. And then we get to see not just our solidarity, but our diversity. And it just creates a deeper intimacy among us as a collective. And I so want that for us because I think there's such a hunger for it. So the book supports setting that structure up and staying true to it, and then looking at how that begins to influence the larger communities that we serve, especially in our families, and in our communities, in our relationships, and in our service. So those are things that the book is intending.
You know, I have been using, since I've read the book, the concept of stars and constellations, and how that is so clear to me that, oh, I'm coming from constellation and they're coming from star.
That's right. That's a big one.
It's like,
that's what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if you can just bite on that for a minute and of explaining a little bit about that star and constellation.
Well, you were just saying you just got back from Ferguson for that reunion, and I remember so distinctly when that happened. A few of us got together here in Charlotte, right, to talk about that. We saw the clip, and there was a group of us. It was a mixed race group, and this white guy in our group. When it was his turn, we had watched the clip and we were told to talk about how we were impacted. And the white guy, young guy, said, I can't believe that man killed that boy, and that should have never happened. And everybody has a right to be outraged. And he was trembling and shaking and was very upset, right? He was a star. Right? He was describing the situation as a star. And so when I talked about it, I said, I can't believe that once again, a white police officer has killed an unarmed Black kid, one of my babies, by the way, and that this has happened, this has permeated, and I'm pissed off, and, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was so clear that I was talking about a constellation of pain. Accumulation of pain. I was talking about the Big Dipper. He was talking about a single incident. And it occurred to me as this is constantly how we miss each other in these conversations. White people tend to bring an unrootedness of history and impact, and they're good individuals. And people of color are bringing a whole history of tattoos and shingles and all kinds of pain. So of course our energetic is different. We were both trembling and crying. We were both upset, right? But we saw something differently. And that's how it works. It works that way with the president we have in office right now. It works that way in corporations when you try to confront somebody about their leadership and its impact. It works that way with a lot of the patriarchy that's happening, where everybody's an innocent individual, but there's a whole collective of men, right? So that to me is an important and doable kind of way that we can begin to look at how we miss each other. And instead of being pissed off about it, we can name it for what it is. Oh, this is, I said, sometimes I use that to talk to people about the problem I'm seeing. You're talking about a star, I'm talking about a constellation.
It has really given language to that, Ruth. I can't even tell you how much it's almost like you just see it. And because you see it, it diffuses the situation once you see it and know it, because you just say, oh, this is what's happening.
Right.
That's your world. This is my world. This is what's happening.
That's right.
It depersonalizes it.
That's right.
And with that depersonalization, which is a lot about, and that's where it comes back to the Dharma. A lot of what I have found in my practice within the Dharma practice is this depersonalization of dukkha, right? Of suffering, of knowing that, yes, I am suffering behind whatever has happened in the world. Yes, this is me. And there is suffering. There just is suffering. And we know that, things are going to happen and everybody experiences it. We all experiences it. And I think that there are times when we want to have the suffering Olympics is, who's suffering more and all of that. But honestly, when we get that lens of understanding the nature of life, the nature of what it is to be a human on this planet, and really allow our practice to inform us, it starts to, this gap between, and you still feel and go through things, but the gap of understanding helps so much.
It's everything. Yeah.
The madness that you're talking about, the reactive,
right.
Instead of reacting, you start to respond.
That's right.
On instead of react, and the reaction is what is making us crazy and sending us high blood pressure.
Right. Because when we react, we pop out of presence. We can't be here because we're invested in our agenda, and to pop out of presence means we constrict our view. We can't see. Our view has gotten narrowed in that moment. So, we have to zoom out instead of be so zoomed in. And that's the practice. We need a practice to help us do that. We don't just do it because it's a good idea, right?
Right.
And speaking to this piece, just briefly, that you talked about, this kind of perspective, this kind of Dharma perspective is what I really point to when I'm talking about it's not personal, not permanent, and not perfect. In the book, which is speaking to the Buddha's teachings on the 3 characteristics of our existence. I carry that mantra in my head when I get in a situation and it's feeling very intense. I can ask myself, for example, am I taking this personally? Am I believing that this is never going to change? Because everything is always changing. Am I believing that this should be other than it is, or that my way is the only way, so I can zoom out. I can back up a little bit.
Yep.
So I carry that around with me often to just to snap out of it,
Yeah. And for me, my little meme inside myself is whenever I see myself intensely being affected by the world and outside circumstances and people and things that are pissing me off, when I go to not me, not mine, not I.
That's right.
Not me, not mine, not I just go poof.
That's right.
It's almost as if this poof, and I am that poof that I know who I really am.
That's right. That's freedom to me.
Right.
That's a piercing, homeopathic moment of freedom.
Hello. That is freedom. And that is what we talk about when we talk about that this leads to liberation and to freedom.
That's right. That's the idea, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's more than an idea. It can be a known experience through practice. It can be something we know directly for ourselves.
It's a direct experience. I want to ask you, when you talk about your practice, what is your practice? What does practice mean to you? What is your practice?
Well, my practice right now is really open space awareness, where I'm on the cushion with that, but mostly I'm in my life with it. It's when I can bring a more spacious, where I'm living in the space more than, you could say I'm living on the paper more than I'm really living in the text that's written on the paper. So I feel like part of what I'm doing now is being aware of a broader sky of different moving parts. Being able to rest in between all that arises. And I feel like my practice right now is noticing not so much, I don't find myself getting so stuck as I used to on a thought that arises, or that somebody does me wrong, for example. Sometimes I do. But mostly what I find with my practice is that it feels like energetic, like bees that flow through and irritate my ear, but then they kind of pass away. So I'm like in my family recently, there's just been a lot of death. I just this morning I got a call from one of my great nieces whose baby had died in his sleep last night. He was one of a twin. And I was just noticing how I could be with her with that without completely falling apart, which is how I used to be with death. It was just so wrong. It was just so, it's not that this wasn't horrible, but it didn't rock my world somehow. It's my relationship with death. It's like, of course, people die, so there's something about this open space that I live in more than the stuff that arises in it. has been feeling like a beautiful practice for me, a practice of it's sweet, there's room for surrender.
Mm.
The stuff that happens in my life is minuscule compared to the space. There's space
Yeah.
for it. So that's been a big part of my practice right now.
So
Yeah.
that's so beautiful, and it's something that's interesting. I don't know what order this is going to go in, but I interviewed Zenju recently, and the culmination of my last question with her talked about. She said it in different words, but it was the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing, the spaciousness.
Yeah.
But I have one question in that, because there's something you said just now
Mm-hmm.
that sparks that I want to unpack for people when you talked about the death and how you can hold it now, because what you're really talking about is that space of equanimity and what equanimity is. But then that nasty close cousin is indifference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the difference between holding something with equanimity, with this spaciousness, with this understanding that
Mm-hmm.
happens, or indifference, like I really don't care. And
Yeah.
it's a thin line, and I'm wondering, because some people can think, well, you just sound like you're indifferent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you kind of just unpack that a
Yeah.
little bit?
I can't speak to how somebody might project onto that by saying, I think you are being indifferent. But what I can speak to is being in that space, the way I try to keep myself honest around whether it's indifference or not, is I have to stay in the body around it. Because equanimity is an experience. It's indifference it's an experience too. But there is a way that there's a disconnect happening in the experience of indifference that I don't feel when I'm in the territory of equanimity. I feel deeply connected and heartful. I think it's hard for people sometimes being in the seat of equanimity, because I notice with my family, I'm not so quick to bail people out like I used to, right? I mean, they'd come to me with all these issues and I'm trying to fix it with throwing money at it, right? And it's kind of like, I can be with you with the issue now and I don't have to throw any money at it. And now they'll call me indifferent, but it's kind of like, I don't need, again, this reactivity or this urgency, this drive, which is really an allergic reaction to being with just what's here.
Yeah.
And what's happened as I've not done that, they've been able to have the space to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. Not enabling it.
And they appreciate that I, held them that way, even though they don't have a language for that.
Yeah. That's some deep equanimity right there,
I feel like that's a big part of my practice right now. And my teachings, the Dharma teachings seem to be centered around that, because it's just where I am.
Yeah.
For the most part. Now, you wouldn't have said that 10 minutes ago if you caught me on the phone, but for the most part, that's the space that I am.
Girl, don't you know I know you're human, just right? And we go in and out of all that. You probably just cursed somebody out a little while ago.
I did. I'm glad the cameras weren't running.
Oh, girl, I understand it. I see that.
I remember Barbara, my partner, coming by me. I'd been on, this was years ago. It really was. And I was slamming the phone down after being on technical support with somebody in another country for like 2 days, right?
Right.
And I'm slamming the phone down, and she walks by and she says, "Oh, way to go, Dharma teacher. I think I'll stop rolling the camera now." And that just totally woke me up. It's like,
yes, I get the same thing. That's right. Like if the Dharma teacher is supposed to be perfect, Dharma teachers are supposed to always respond perfectly.
Oh my gosh, don't be imperfect for sure. Yeah.
Look, I am so happy to have this conversation with you, Ms. Ruth King. If there's anything else that, that you feel you'd like to say, just this is it. This is the time to do it. If there's something you feel.
Oh, God, the only thing I can say is just how excited I am that this series is happening, because it just makes me happy that we're moved. You know, the Dharma is so precious to me, and it's been such good medicine,
Yeah.
that I'm really happy that and you're a big part of this, which I appreciate. Or you and others I know, but you know, just this way of continuing to put your arms around us and creating ways for us to be held and seen and honored through, you know, this lens of these powerful liberative teachings. So I'm grateful. I just want to say how grateful I am, and what a beautiful time it is for us with the
Yeah.
Dharma,
Yeah.
and how hopeful I feel. Yeah, and I just hope it can continue. May it continue.
May it continue. May it continue. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in October at Spirit Rock at the Black Buddhist Teachers Gathering.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to have a good time. It's going to be, right now, we've got, I don't know, almost 70 teachers cross lineage who are signed up to come. And it's going to be, like you said, you know, just being with each other, getting to support each other and know each other is so important. And I am just thrilled that it fit in your schedule that you could come. You will be.
Oh yeah. No, I'm happy to be there. I'm looking forward to hearing more about what the layout of the week is going to be.
Yes,
And
we're working on it diligently.
yeah, there's a nice buzz in the air around it. I'm talking to different people that, oh, you got your ticket. So I think there's
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now I'm so happy to hear that.
That's right. Yeah, I'm sure you hear a lot of things, but that's the stuff I'm hearing.
I'm in the background, just all I am is on emails and camp and what's not happening and moving things.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah,
So,
nobody sees all that dirty laundry.
No, that's all I'm seeing right now. So it's good to hear the perspective on the other side. That people.
I think there's a good buzz coming. There's folks I'm sure have finally landed, you know.
Nice.
So it's rare that we have an opportunity. And I mean, one of the reasons I'm coming is because it's so rare that we have an opportunity to be in one place together.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be live. It's going to be live. And I am just thrilled. So I am going to not take up any more of your time. I love you dearly.
Oh, I love you too, Konda. Thank you.
Thank you. You
for all the goodness you're doing.
Oh, you're you know, this is a mutual fan club. It must be because you are the work that you do in the world of bringing how you have integrated the Dharma lens with the race work that you do is absolutely the perfect thing that we need more than anything, I think, in this country. And you are in the center of it and bringing it.
I'm happy about that. So.
Yeah, and I continually just learn from you. So
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I will see you real soon.
Okay, President.
All right, sweetie. You be well.